Hi, so crossroads and transition points and points in your life when you just don't know anymore and things don't seem to make sense that you've been doing for the longest time, and maybe you've been happy in your life for the longest time and suddenly it doesn't make sense. And maybe that leads to a full-on dark night of the soul moment. Maybe it's just a minor bump in the road. Maybe it's a crisis that you can work through, and maybe, just maybe, you need to turn your life upside down and go do something completely different. How do you navigate these times? How do you navigate your friends' reactions to the changes you're feeling, the states that you're undergoing? And yeah, going to be talking a little bit about that. I'm going to do it because of Jonna Jinton's video. She came up with a video tonight to say she's in a bit of a transition place this year and questioning. She's just questioning where she is in her life. And so I'm asking questions. Is it okay to question where you are in your life? And where you might go from there. Why is it necessary for us as humans to do that? And so on and so forth. So if any of this sounds like it's going to be of interest, pull up a chair, grab a coffee, and we'll see how this goes. So yeah, it's Jonna Jinton's video that prompted this one from me, because she's always doing her lovely videos. She's out there in nature. She's on YouTube. She's a YouTuber. And yeah, she's always having a lovely time doing her paintings. She's out in nature. She's living this fantastic Nordic, idyllic existence. But of course, she's human. So it isn't always idyllic. You know, there's ups and downs, there's bumps along the way, and you can carefully choreograph your life for video, but there's always a private persona that we don't see. And it's fair to say that none of her fans know what's going on with her at the moment, and I just wish her all the best. But what especially prompted this video were the negative comments on hers. I say negative, people who are responding to try to say to her, no, you've got everything you want in life. You should just be happy now. Grass always greener syndrome is dangerous. You should just look to be happy where you are now. And that got me thinking. Firstly, I thought none of us can truly prescribe for anybody else. None of us can. Whatever we think someone else is going through, none of us truly know. And it can be tempting. It could be tempting to give your opinions on someone else's life, but you can't know their reasons. You can't know what's necessary for their soul journey. You know, we're all of us spiritual. We're all of us spirit having a human experience. And we're not always here for the reasons we think we're here, you know? So we tend to be quite prescriptive in our own lives about what we need to do. And we kind of make everything a bit clinical at times. You know, you've got your bucket list. You've got the things that you must do before you die. You've got your pension sorted. You get your job sorted. You get your bills sorted. You get a place to stay sorted. If you're lucky enough, if you're in Western society, you know, you have to do the practical stuff in order to get by. And yet the practical stuff, while necessary to live, doesn't answer the call of your soul, the call of your heart. You know, it doesn't begin to go there. A modern life doesn't really take you there either in a lot of ways. You know, you have the job that you go to, and you might do that for some years. You come home, you might do the same sort of routine every night. You probably watch a lot of TV, a lot of people do. So life tends to be quite clinical, quite a bit of drudgery, certainly a lot of routine. And is that what we should be pursuing? So none of us, as I say, can know truly the path of another person. And it's all very well to imagine that, you know, for some people, the answer is you should be grateful for what you've got. If you've got a job, you're lucky. Don't rock the boat. Don't make your life more difficult. Don't try to invite uncertainty into your life or difficulty into your life. But you might need a bit of uncertainty in your life, you know? It's a dangerous question in a way, isn't it? Because what you're doing is you're inviting in deeper parts of yourself to join the party that might have become inured over years and years of routine. And you might not have even realised that parts of yourself got buried or just repressed, maybe. The first thing to do, I guess, is notice where the discomfort is and sit with it if you can. Don't seek to try to avoid it. Don't try to repress it. And don't try to counter it with any other behaviours that might be harmful, such as drinking too much or overeating or, comfort eating or things like this. We're not used to sitting with discomfort. So I guess the first thing to know is to notice it. The first thing to do is notice what's wrong. And then you can start to identify what you might do to meet your soul's calling at that point, if that's your journey. And there's all sorts of different factors that come into play in this regard, if you're able to at all, But we're not supposed to necessarily pick a state and stay in it. And that's what the writer Anais Nin said when she said a quote, and it's something along the lines of, life is a process of becoming. What many humans make a mistake about doing is picking a particular state and staying in it. And that's completely true. Many people exist in varying stages of mediocrity. They've sacrificed wild longings of their soul for creature comforts, for security. And there's got to be an interplay of both elements in your life. There's got to be the practical. You've got to be able to live and feed yourself and clothe yourself and have a roof over your head. But there does have to be something a little bit deeper at times as well. And depending on who you are and what you're looking to achieve on this life. There's a bit of a buzzword of the NPC going around spiritual circles at the moment. And the NPC is the non-playable character or non-playing character or something like that in computer games. Basically, in a computer game, you're playing as a particular character, so you can run around and do all sorts of things, but you come up against the computer characters, and the computer characters just have their script that they deliver. In other words, they live unconsciously. They don't make conscious choices. They're not really awake and they're not really aware. And many, many people live their lives like that in varying stages of unconsciousness without even knowing it, of course. But they're just plodding along and they're just getting by. And I'm not talking about people in real difficulty either, Some people responded to Jonna by saying, well, look, you're really lucky. You're not, say, in Ukraine or this, that or the other. And of course, there are some real horrors on this planet at the moment, and there are people stuck in horrific circumstances, and they're not going to be thinking along the lines of what choices they make for life path stuff. They're going to be looking at how to survive, how to just get by, how to live, and what choices they need to make to just try to get by on a day-to-day basis, So that's an entirely different thing. I'm talking about if you are in a position whereby you've got choices and you can make choices. And some people were acting in the comments section as though it's a bad thing to think about choice and to say, look, God has given me this life. I'm just going to be grateful for what I've got. And anything else over and above that is kind of an indulgence. And again, I don't agree with that either. We are not meant, as far as I'm concerned, to stay in the one state. And I think as a species, we're kind of repressed in some ways, because we are all consciousness experiencing itself subjectively. There is no doubt we're spiritual beings having a human experience. We are eternal beings. Our souls are eternal, and we reincarnate. So we come back and do this all over again. How many people are consciously aware of that? And if they were, how might that inform their day-to-day living choices? So many people end up stuck in their routines, as I say, that they get completely buried, and parts of their psyche get buried as well. And we have a world that doesn't really care for your spiritual or psychic development in that regard, or your psychological development even. The world just wants you to act accordingly. The world just wants you to go out to work and go home and do whatever it is to keep the economy going, etc. It's up to you to really take responsibility for your well-being, for your spiritual, emotional, psychological well-being. You can't expect the world to do that for you. The society that we live in is unfortunately a bit toxic. We're in a bit of a dodgy one-way relationship with it, whereby we're sort of in thrall to it, and it's exploitative. We are being exploited left, right, and centre, because we've given up so much for creature comforts over the years, and because this society has monopolised everything in the Western world, that in order to get out of it, to get out of the matrix, as it were, you have to be quite radical in your approach. You either go travelling, or you get off grid, or you live in a spiritual community, say, an intentional community. But you're not going to find it particularly easy, because this is a sort of monoculture at the moment. You're either in it, or you're on the margins, and you're on the fringes of society. And so for many people, that is an unconscionable idea, and it certainly was over the years. It's only perhaps in more recent years that you've seen a bit of a rise of people going off in their camper vans and trying to live an alternative life, because they've realised, hey, hang on a minute, working every hour we can for a very low wage and very little satisfaction actually isn't living at all. And so you're getting younger people now making different decisions. And I think that's fantastic. That's as it should be. This culture has had a stranglehold on us all for far too long. And our parents and our parents' parents, they just got on with it, and they just dealt with it. And that was the hand they were dealt, and that's what you did back in the day. But it doesn't necessarily have to be that way now. And so what do you do when you wake up and you find yourself at odds with the life you are living? It can be a tough one. You can have built a life for yourself that you absolutely loved maybe 5-10 years ago, and suddenly wake up one morning and go, hang on a minute, this doesn't even begin to encompass any of my needs anymore, any of my new hopes, dreams, desires, anything, And obviously taking a bit of a pragmatic approach is a really good idea if you find yourself in this position. So you might want to draw up some pros and cons lists, work out some plans, think about where you're going, On a time management course many years ago, one of the people who ran the course just said, make plans annually, not necessarily related to work, just in life, or make a 5-year goal plan, but renew it annually, And I thought that's a really good idea, because we're growing and we're changing. And especially with us being so busy, we're usually busy running around doing all sorts of things, but we don't check in with ourselves that often to find out, have we changed? Have we changed our goals? Are they still the same? Making time for yourself to just sit with yourself and think about who you are and who you're becoming, it could be quite a good idea. Because if you don't, whatever's repressed just comes up with quite a lot of ferocity in your life. So if you're not paying attention and you're becoming something new and something very different to your life, your soul will tell you one way or another, or your heart, with that level of discomfort, with a concomitant level of discomfort. And it's really a call. The discomfort is a call. It's a call for you to make changes. You know, you might just see it as an inconvenience. You might see it as a horrible thing that you're dealing with, but it's a call. Your body is uncomfortable because you're trying to force it to do something that it isn't happy with any longer. And so it's trying to work out what you do with that. Do you need to compromise? You know, have you built up a fortress around yourself? Maybe you need to kick down a wall of your fortress, or maybe just put a window in. You know, it's just working out plans where you can. And I'd say at this time as well, be especially careful with advice from other people. So going back to Jonna Jinton then, and the people who are commenting, stay where you are, you're really lucky, you've got a wonderful life, just be grateful for that, all of this. If you're coming up with similar concerns and you're voicing similar issues in your life, you're going to find a lot of pushback, probably. Maybe from expected sources, maybe not. So just be aware of that as well, because like I say, no one can prescribe for another person. No one can prescribe for another person. Not your parents, not your best friend, not even your partner can know what's going on in your heart, truly. Only you can know that. And people have different reasons for giving all sorts of advice. Some of them they're consciously aware of, and some of them they are not. Some of it will be well-intended, some of it may not be, you know? I think one of the reasons people were saying this to Jonna tonight, if I had to hazard a guess, I would say it's because we're all relational beings. That is to say, although we're all independent beings, we exist in relation to each other, and especially like in your peer group. And your peer group can be your friends, but it could also include maybe some favourite YouTube celebrities like that lady, Jonna Jinton. And you exist in a way that you're comfortable with, usually, probably. And you're comfortable with where your friends are. And that makes you even more comfortable, okay? You know where you are in relation to them. You know who you are because of them as much as because of yourself. And you can see an example of this. So, for instance, I was reading on Twitter a little while ago. There's this lady on Twitter, and she was an alcoholic, and she quit alcohol. And when she did, a couple of her friends were pushing back. Actually, it might have been family members who were pushing back and saying to her, "You're fine. You don't need to completely quit. You can still have a couple occasionally," and things like this. Now, obviously, with alcoholism, they can't. If you're an alcoholic, that is something that you can't do. But why would they say something like that to her? Now, maybe they're not aware that she couldn't do it, but that isn't the point. The point is, probably, in my best guess, it would be that when she was drinking too, it probably helped them mask the fact that they were drinking too much. If you're in a group of people and everyone's having a few drinks, everyone's having a good time, if you're doing that too much, say, you can practice a level of cognitive dissonance. You don't have to look at your own behaviour at all, and you can just enjoy it and just have fun in your life. But if one of your group suddenly goes on a health kick and says, right, I'm not doing this anymore, just going to go down the gym, it can make you look at your own behaviour. In other words, it can make you look at your own shadow. Not many people want to do that. So when you pipe up and you start shining your light because you're changing your behaviour for the better, it casts an extra shadow over everyone in your group who is not doing that. And not only that, they don't want to do that at all. So you're making them look at themselves. They're not ready to, they don't want to. So the best thing they can think of to do is pull you back down with them. And then they definitely don't have to look at their behaviour at all then. And everybody's fine, which is, of course, not a good idea. bit of a toxic sort of mindset, but there it is. And I think an awful lot of people are like that. So I think when you look to make changes, it threatens the group that you're in. And you don't mean to threaten the group that you're in. That isn't your motivation. Your motivation is you want to level up. You want to make changes in your life because you recognise that you need to grow and stretch and learn and do something different. But the people around you might not want you to do that. And there can be other motivations too. People can project their own unrealised dreams onto you, for example. So say if you are thinking of going travelling and maybe you say that to a parental figure or something like that, and maybe they never did that. And so maybe to them, they would say to you, no, don't go, just stay. You've got your job, you've got your good life, you're doing your good thing. But maybe it's because, this is an example and it's theoretical, but maybe it's because maybe it's painful for them to think about their own unrealised dreams. And if you go off and live your dreams, it makes it even more painful for them. Whereas if you don't, then that sort of squared it in their head that, yes, you don't go off and you don't live your dreams, you just get on with life and yada, yada, yada. And they don't have to think any more deeply then. Again, it's about the shadow side and projection. So bear in mind what people are saying to you and what people want to keep you back and why. And in some cases, it could just be jolly good advice. It could be that you're talking about going off into the jungle or something, and maybe you've got a family member who says, hang on a minute, that could be dangerous. And maybe they've got a point. So it's just as well to take it on a case-by-case basis. Listen to what other people say by all means. Don't let that stop you if you know that what you're doing is your heart's inner calling and you're listening to your intuition. Obviously, having a bit of sense about it if you can, and keeping your feet on the ground, but keeping your head in the clouds is probably a good way of doing it as well. So you make sure you dot your I's, cross your T's, get your paperwork sorted, get your practicalities sorted as well where possible. But that's when you know what you're doing. What if you don't know what you're doing? You've just got this level of discomfort. Maybe everything is weird and discombobulating and you don't know what you're doing anymore. Your life doesn't make any sense, but you're going through the motions and you're aware. You're aware that there's a calling. You're aware that there's something upon your heart, but you can't translate that yet into real world action. Well, it happens. It happens, and people who try to say otherwise, again, don't pay too much mind to people who just want you to just remain in the one state. If that's happening, there's a reason for it. And I think if you can, just sit with that discomfort, because the discomfort at first will lead to practical steps along the way at some point. And you can sit with it, but you can look at what's painful and you can maybe think about ways in which to introduce something more fun and more enjoyable into your life as an interim step until you answer bigger questions, or maybe just as a pathway to answer those bigger questions. So some of that discomfort, see if you can trace it back to a particular thing or a particular ideology maybe. What's missing in your life? Is your life quite well balanced between work and play, between creativity and your routine, etc.? And have a look along those lines, you know. Ultimately, I think if you introduce greater creativity into your life and meditation, I think these are excellent starting points. Creativity will in itself lead to some joy, and meditation is an amazing way of casting light into dark areas. It's a great illuminating thing. It's brilliant for awareness generally. The more you meditate, the more you get to know yourself. And if you get to know yourself more, you're going to have more light and more consciousness in the decisions that you make. You're going to make more conscious choices, more aware of whatever it is that's going on with you, you know. Also, meditation is a way of adding in a bit of breathing room between feeling that level of discomfort and then acting upon it. If you meditate, it's that interim step. It's a place to just sit and be and think and just take a breath. So you don't necessarily have to knee-jerk react if what you're feeling is quite extreme, because the knee-jerk react response might not be the most skillful response. Creativity as well. Creativity is a way of, it can be a way of expressing all sorts of things. It can be a way of expressing a lot of fun. It can be a way to just bring out the inner child, as it were. Sometimes life can get you very strung out, right? Sometimes it can be very stressful out there. But we all need a balance. We all need a balance between the light and the dark. If you get too sucked into the dark, it can eat your soul, you know? So you have to bring your consciousness back up if you can. You have to bring that light back into your heart. Otherwise, there can be a dark tunnel that you don't want to go down, you know? So creativity can be a great way to just let off steam and have a bit of fun, but it also serves another level as well. I think it's also about excavating deeper things within you. It's about a way of alchemy. It's an alchemizing process, whereby you can turn the dark and the difficult and the downright disturbing into something very beautiful and very extraordinary in some cases. You know, you can transmute the darkness into light. And I don't mean through repressing it, and I don't mean through ignoring it or trying to paint darkness a pretty, you know, into pretty colours. I mean literally transmuting. I mean literally working through and working with and not resisting. So I think if you've got that creativity and you're meditating, these are really good starting points. If you're facing your own dark night of the soul, if you're having any difficulty, if you're at a crossroads, and these crossroads or difficult points in our lives can arise many, many times over, and it can lead in some cases to a full-on sort of death rebirth cycle in us. And sometimes, other times, it can just lead to something a little bit more gentle, a bit of a gentle nudge to call you into a different place of existence. But life is a dance. It's a co-creation between you, the absolute sovereign being that you are, and God. You know, it's a dance. And I think with our society, there's a tendency sometimes to go into victimhood or to think, oh, why is this happening to me? And things like this when things get dark and difficult as they do. The best thing any of us can do is to go into a mode that empowers you. And if you start thinking of things, even the most difficult things, as things that are happening for you, for your development, and remembering that you've got personal agency here, that you're co-creating with spirit. You know, you're not a victim in this scenario. In the most cases, and I'm not talking about if you're a victim of crime, in which case, yes, you are a victim in that moment, but you can work to re-empower yourself again, you know? Standing in your own power is the best thing that you can do. And it's when you realise that you are a worthy being. It's when you can have compassion for all the times you've messed up, because we've all messed up in our lives. And when you can have a genuine kindness towards yourself, a genuine kind attitude towards yourself, compassion, kindness, self-love. And I don't mean in a narcissistic way, but I mean just in a way of appreciating the person that you are and the journey that you've been on. Just in holding yourself in high esteem, just in having that respect for yourself and holding it, you know? And holding on to that feeling. And life will try and destabilize that many, many times in all sorts of different ways. You'll be tested. But always come back to that. And if you need help and advice from other people, by all means ask. But don't allow that to destabilize you. Don't allow that to knock you off your balance. Come back to who you are. Come back to taking ownership of your choices again. Intuition can help once you start leaning into your intuition and you realize it doesn't steer you wrong. So that can really help as well. So it's a real case of leaning into the spiritual a little bit, leaning into intuition, leaning into meditation, and leaning into creativity. Because again, with our modern day life and this sort of monoculture and this onward march towards homogenization and towards a sort of corporatization of everything in our world, I think there's never been a more important time to really dive into some zany creativity, to have a bit of fun and to express yourself. And part of that journey is also being unafraid to make a fool of yourself at times. You might not make a fool of yourself, but don't let fear hold you back. Don't let fear hold you back. If you've got anything creative that you want to do, just go for it. Because it's good for the soul. It's alchemizing and it's good for the soul, you know? I think very often creativity can be like a wild calling, and it can call you towards nature. It can call you towards Great Spirit, towards God. It can call you towards those deeper parts of yourself in all sorts of ways if you let it. So know that you're not alone. Everyone goes through this. If you're going through this right now and you're in a state of turmoil, don't worry. As you know, obviously you're going to be a bit worried, but try not to let yourself get consumed. Try not to stay in your head too much. Don't overthink it. Overthinking is like a death to intuition. Intuition is a light touch. Overthinking is a heavy touch. And I say this as I used to be, I still can be terrible at overthinking. And I have to really stop myself and try and step into my intuition. Intuition is the lightest of touches. It's the knowing without knowing how you know, but you just know. And it's remarkable because when you start leaning into intuition as well, I think that's when you start to see the magic of life more. These synchronicities start lining up. And you start to realise as well how interconnected everything is. What you started to moan about and see as an enemy and see as something working against you and a difficulty coming in. And suddenly you might see it in an entirely different light and realise actually there's a reason for this and there's a reason what's going on and there's more to it than you could have envisaged. And it could encompass past lives even. It's that deep. There's a web where everything is interrelated. And because we are all interconnected, we are all one consciousness, as I say, experiencing itself subjectively. We think we are separate because our consciousness is funneled into these bodies, but we're not separate. And not really. We're all connected on planes of existence that many people don't know are even real. And I think a lot of it as well is it's calling us into deeper parts of who we are. And it's calling us into deeper levels of awareness and deeper levels of life. So instead of living your life just in an NPC way, just in very much a reactionary way, you know, it's almost like if you've ever driven to a place and then realised you haven't remembered the journey at all because it's gone into your sort of muscle memory and you just don't even remember how you just did that, but your muscle memory, it's just literally a place in your brain where you're on autopilot. And it's almost a bit like that, you know, the different parts of your brain that hold different parts of memory as well. And I think there's an invitation in life for many of us who are lucky enough to live in the Western world, to have a roof over your head and choices to make. There's an invitation to live life on a very deep level if you want to, and to discover more of who you are and to bring in more aspects of yourself, maybe from previous lifetimes, maybe from spirit. You might want to start to engage with spirit and have a much deeper relationship with it. And if you do, that can be utterly transforming. I don't think we're here for the reasons we think we're here. We think we're here to just make money, to get by, to have a career, to do all of these things. This is what society tells us. But on a soul level, we're here for entirely different reasons. Ultimately, we're all here to learn about love, greater levels of love. And I don't just mean like romantic love, I just mean love, like living from the heart, living with just great love and compassion for all beings, right? Jesus taught us love your enemy, and it doesn't get any deeper than that. It doesn't get any more wild than that. It's radical love. But then there's also each of our individual soul journeys and what they look like too. And again, we don't know what somebody else's is, and we don't know what lessons they're here to learn. And we don't know what challenges they're here to learn either. But we also don't know who they're going to become at the end of it. So if you know someone going through this process, or you're going through this process, it's also exciting because you're on the edge. You're on the edge of becoming. You're on the edge of becoming something new. And that's something to honour and to welcome, because you don't know how deep it could go. You don't know who you end up on the other side. But so long as you keep love and integrity in your heart, you'll be fine. And you might grow into a state of being that you never could have envisaged. And that is exciting. And that isn't something that anybody who's running our society at the moment is particularly interested in. So it's up to you to be interested in. It's up to you to nurture and honour the growth and the calling, and to see when it is a calling, and to see when the breakdown can be a breakthrough, and to hold your own hand during this process, and to be with yourself during this process, to be able to sit with a little bit of uncertainty. And to that end, deep belly breathing is also really, really good. If you find yourself falling into fear or a lack mindset, if you deep belly breathe, it takes you out of fight, flight, freeze, because it activates your parasympathetic nervous system. So there's that as well. And trusting in God as well, and leaning into that relationship, because that won't steer you wrong either. So if you're going through this at the moment, you're not alone. It's going to be okay. It's a lot, probably, to deal with, but it's also potentially exciting as well, because it takes you out of the NPC mode. You know, this crisis that you're going through is an awakening as well, because it's an awakening to a different part of being, calling into play parts of you that maybe you didn't even know you had in you, as you utilize new skills, or as you learn new skills, as you navigate entirely different waters, whether you decide that you want to just do a brand new course into something you've never previously considered, etc., etc. Whatever it is life is asking you to be, it's an invitation, and it's an invitation to something bigger. And if you look at it like that, that might just help get you through. And remember, the advice of other people around you might be good advice, but it might also be a bit of their own repressed or unhealed parts of their psyche that they're trying to project onto you. So just be aware, stand in your own power. Thank them for their advice, but stand in your own power and make your own decisions, and lean into trusting yourself that you know what you can do to get yourself not only through this, but thriving on the other side as a brand new human. So it's going to be fine. It's going to be fine. So I hope you got something from this video. If you did, leave me a comment, and take care. I wish you a lovely week. I wish you a week with a bit of magic from the universe. And I wish you a week of some fun creativity. And I wish you a week of knowing yourself on a deeper level and liking who you find yourself to be. May you be well. May you be happy. Take care, and God bless.